Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of the Contrarian. We're so happy to have back Anderson Clayton, who is the chairman of the State Democratic Party of North Carolina. Welcome, Anderson.
Thanks for having us, Jen, as always.
Well, you guys pulled an inside straight. You got Roy Cooper to run for Senate. What's been the reaction among Democrats and the general public in North Carolina?
I mean, the energy on the ground is electric. I've been on a rural tour throughout eastern North Carolina for the last 2 months. And so, out of the 28 counties that I've been to, the number one person that people have talked about entering this race is Roy Cooper. And so, I'm excited that now he's finally entered and we're able to go around and energize our entire party around the candidate that's going to be able to beat Michael Watley, who's the Republican handpicked nominee, to go up against him next cycle.
Exactly. And Watley is kind of a known figure. After all, he was the guy who was leading the party when they tried to steal a North Carolina Supreme Court seat. Has he ever explained his role in that or justified why they tried to deprive the voters of North Carolina of their chosen candidate?
I mean, he sat on UNC Chapel Hill's campus last year and bragged about the RNC funding the efforts to deny for 6 months the Supreme Court election in North Carolina that Democrats won last cycle by 734 votes with Justice Allison Riggs' seat. And so I think that, besides just that alone, backing up candidates like Mark Robinson, standing by him, even though he called himself a quote black Nazi last year. And then also before that, being one of the key lobbyists on the Keystone XL pipeline and trying to be in the pockets of big oil and big gas. And I think that right now he's setting a precedent that he would fulfill a Republican agenda in Washington, D.C. And we need somebody in North Carolina who's going to complete the North Carolina agenda. And that for us is definitely Roy Cooper.
So I assume he was all in on the big ugly bill, which is going to strip 600,000 plus North Carolinians for health care. It's quite a contrast because, of course, Governor Cooper, when he was governor, was able to extend Medicaid to just about that many people. How do you think that issue is going to play out? And what's the sentiment about Medicaid right now in North Carolina?
Well, we had 10 years of Republicans that denied Medicaid expansion in our state legislature, and Governor Cooper did fight for 8 years to expand Medicaid. And finally, at the end of 2023, Republicans in our state realized they were losing more money that they could be getting to North Carolina from the federal government, and finally decided to expand Medicaid in the state with Governor Cooper's help and making sure that 600,000 people, to your point, accessed health insurance and a doctor for the first time in their lives. And what was so impressive about that was the fact that people did come together from all across the state to help get people signed up. It was estimated to take 2 years to get over 600,000 people signed up on health insurance, and actually ended up being within the first year we saw a majority of the people enroll. And even Tom Tillis, we saw him take a vote no on the reconciliation bill because even he knew what it would do to communities across North Carolina. And places like Martin County right now they've already seen what Medicaid expansion or the denial of it did to their community. Their hospital closed. And when you have a hospital closed in a community, it basically means that, the livelihood of people there is at risk every single day because they're not within a proximity to life-saving care. And so we know that the reconciliation bill has stopped that from happening, has stopped that hospital from reopening. And we know that it's going to continue to have devastating effects across rural North Carolina and all across our communities in North Carolina too.
I wonder if Tom Tillis, now that you mention it, isn't closer to Roy Cooper than he is to Michael Watley. After all, Tom Tillis did try to stop the big ugly bill. Last time I checked, Tom Tillis was in favor of sanctions against Russia, just like Roy Cooper is. And he's been making noise and opposed to tariffs. Do you think, maybe not Tom Tillis himself, but people who liked Tom Tillis will come over to the Democratic side this election because Roy Cooper is their kind of guy, I guess?
I mean, I think that Tom Tillis proved that he's having to run away from the Republican Party, and it used to be that you could be a Republican with an independent thought and really being able to represent your state's agenda. And I think what we see right now in Washington is someone that's got to be a rubber stamp for Donald Trump. And that's exactly what Michael Watley would be. He's not anybody who would be an independent thinker about what's best for the people of the state that I am trying to represent. And he's someone who's been in Washington, D.C. the last 2 years. I'm like, what do you know? What do you know about North Carolina still? And I think that Roy Cooper's just got the rural roots that we need from Eastern North Carolina, and the ability to speak to people across the state that have just felt forgotten and left behind by this administration and by the policies that are coming down from DC.
Is there any issue that Mike Watley has ever disagreed with Donald Trump on, to your knowledge?
No, he's been the RNC chair for the last 2 years. Before that, he was the NCGOP chair, and he was also chief legal counsel to the RNC. And so, if anything, he's been trying to get Trump out of the situations that he's found himself in, and also people across the state and across the country, right? He's endorsed every extreme Republican candidate that we've seen because they've funneled money to them, and then also been there to, again, with the election denial that we had last November, right? I mean, he was willing to throw out military and overseas ballots to be able to win an election in a state like this. And I just think it goes to show that that record's going to follow you wherever you go, especially if you choose to run for statewide office in it.
I recently did a little research on North Carolina, so I was writing a piece on the race, and I was surprised to see what a large majority of North Carolinians either want abortion access to be completely free or at least partially free. How is that issue going to play out in North Carolina?
I mean, North Carolina, I tell people we are not such a red state. We're a gerrymandered state, and that's allowed Republicans to maintain power in it for quite some time. And even when we saw the restriction of abortion rights come down in 2023, it was because we didn't have a broken supermajority like we do now in our state legislature. And I think that that's a really important piece to know that even last November, more Democrats won the popular vote for both our state House and our state Senate, but we did not win the majority of the seats in either chamber. And it goes to show you that when we're able to reverse partisan and racial gerrymandering like we have a plan to do in this state, we're going to be able to guarantee free and fair elections that will enable people's rights to abortion, to voting rights, from everything to public education rights like we see right now in our Supreme Court being held up. But right now with our courts that back up a legislature that wants to restrict rights, we're in a sticky situation in North Carolina with that. But I think overall it tends to play to where most North Carolinians and majority of Americans, right, want the freedom of choice. They want the ability to live and work and stay in their communities. They want the ability to be able to vote freely and fairly. And I think that that's what Republicans are missing right now when they're talking to the average person.
Absolutely. Well, today the trade war, I guess, officially got underway. Donald Trump's much promised tariffs around the world went into effect. What's the impact on farmers, on businesses, on consumers in North Carolina? What are you hearing as you travel around the state?
I mean, people are struggling and their pocketbooks are also struggling with that. And especially when you see it from small business owners, they were feeling the effects of these tariffs even before they came into play because you saw that the foot traffic that stopped through your small business, right? Because you're seeing people trying to pinch their pocketbooks because they don't know the uncertainty, right, of the economy that we're in right now is not helpful to people being able to actually plan out what they can afford and budget out what they need to for their families right now. And I think that what we're seeing is a lot of young people that are already using buy now, pay later in order to be able to afford groceries or school supplies when they're going back to college or they're going back to high school classes or whatnot. And I think that there is a big need right now to talk about affordability in this country and do what Donald Trump had said he was going to, which is lower prices. But that's not necessarily what we've seen out of this administration. Walmart, even I saw the other day coming out with almost 50% increases on some goods, including pots and pans, home goods, the things that you're going to see more and more people as they are graduating and building their first homes are going to need. And so I think that we're definitely going to see that stretch for young people right now, their pocketbooks.
One thing that's been particularly egregious with this administration, but of course the Republicans in Congress have no interest in investigating, is just the rampant corruption, whether it's cryptocurrency, whether it's getting a $400 million jet from the Qataris, whether it's promoting his properties around the world when he's on the clock for the American people. Talk a little bit about Roy Cooper's background as a prosecutor and what he plans to do if he does get into office and Democrats get one or both houses in terms of investigating and putting an end to this. It really does seem like highway robbery.
I mean, it is. I think that you can't talk about politics right now without talking about the corruption that we're seeing coming out of Washington, D.C. from scams alone with Doge and the leftover remnants of that committee, and also Elon Musk and his ability to sort of traipse around Washington, D.C. with unchecked privileges. And I also think that the Republican government is also seeing that themselves, right? They're looking at Donald Trump and legislators and also judicial responsibilities, right? I've seen a judiciary come in and put a check on Donald Trump's agenda too this year, more than I think that we thought we would have from the Republican Party. Not to say that they've done it all right that we would want them to. But I do think that Roy Cooper, having a background in being a prosecutor, but also somebody that's been the attorney general for the state of North Carolina, he's taken on big pharma and the ability to take on big banks and also the ability to protect people across the state. He comes in it with a mindset of people first, which I think right now we need in Washington, D.C. more than ever. And also somebody that knows how to question people, knows how government is supposed to work, which I think we need right now in Washington, D.C. too. Somebody that's been at every level of it, from the state level to the statewide level, now to the federal level. And so you're going to understand how the budget cuts in Washington are impacting the state budgets and the burden, right, that they're putting on states with coming up with new healthcare opportunities, right, for people that are going to be cut from Medicaid, and also looking towards SNAP benefits. It's estimated by 2028 in North Carolina, SNAP will no longer be a program that's accessible because of the federal cuts that we're seeing. That's 1.4 million people who won't have access to food and that are going to be food insecure. And so how is a state legislature going to be able to come up with that if a state budget already is at a crux? And I think that we're going to see that throughout every state in the nation right now, going into the next 2 and 4 years of the state and of the countries.
There are two necessities in every election other than having a great candidate, and that is raising money and organizing people, getting them registered and out to vote. In the first 24 hours, I believe Roy Cooper set a record for a Democratic Senate candidate. How is the fundraising looking? And then secondly, what kinds of turnout the voter registration do you have in plan between now and the election?
Governor Cooper continues to be one of the best fundraisers in the country, in my personal opinion. And we're really, really proud to see the excitement across the country for this race, but also in the state of North Carolina. And that shows that first fundraising hall. It was one of the top Senate fundraising halls that they've seen in history. And so jazzed about that. One thing that we're trying to do right now, Trump's DOJ and, mentioning the scandal with Justice Allison Riggs's fight in the Supreme Court last year. Right now, Trump's DOJ has sued our state board of elections to try to purge the voter rolls in North Carolina of over almost 100,000 voters that are qualify or that have quote unquote missing information from their voter registration records. They never needed to have those numbers in voter registration records before, but we have a Republican dominated state board of elections now, thanks to our Republicans in the state legislature that stripped power away from our current Democratic governor, Josh Stein. And so right now, what North Carolina Democrats are really focused on, besides just our municipal elections in 25 that are going on, we're also focused on making sure that people know how to correct their ballots and if their ballots need to be corrected. And so we're going to make sure we're targeting people throughout August with phone banks, with voter registration. So you can go to our state party website and get involved with us there, ncdp.org. And if you're somebody in North Carolina, you could be one of the voters that Republicans are trying to purge from the voter rolls. And so if you can go to ncdp.org/repair, it's the website on the State Board of Elections to check and see if it's searchable. You can check and see if your name is one of the folks that they're trying to target. And if you are, we're asking you to go to your State Board of Elections and make sure that you fix whatever information may be missing from your voter registration form, because this is the way that Republicans are trying to steal elections in the future. They are trying to decide who can and cannot vote in them, right? And that's the way in which we've got to be on our A game to be prepared for that. So August, we're starting phone banks. September, we're going to be door knocking too. And so you can go on our website, look for more opportunities there. But that's one of the biggest ways it's going to help for elections in 2026. We win elections in the state on the margins, and Republicans know that, which is why they're threatening this many voters and also across the state that we're seeing it in.
And to remind people, it was 734 votes
Yes.
that decided a state Supreme Court race out of and a gigantic, that's a tiny, tiny margin.
Out of 5.5 million votes cast. And I tell people every time, I'm like, if you don't think your vote matters, like I need you to look at some of these critical races where, if we're able to take back our Supreme Court by 2028, we're able to give 4 more House of Representative seats back to the Democratic Party by reversing partisan and racial gerrymandering. And when we look at what Republicans are doing in Texas right now, you have to understand that like everything that we do as a party building up to building the long game, it's strategy for the future. And we've got to make sure these down ballot races are ones that we prioritize too.
Absolutely. Boy, is that true. Listen, if you had one more person at each precinct, that would have been a runaway election in North Carolina compared to the result. Well, Anderson, you've done a fabulous job organizing, and good luck with the turnout, the vote. Good luck with the money raising. We are going to check back because your race is one of the top races, if not the top race, for the United States Senate. And I think it's going to be a bellwether of where the Democratic Party is going. So thanks so much for joining us, and safe travels as you go around your state.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.